Hi, and thank you for visiting my channel. For more information, kindly subscribe and follow. Now let's get started.
WWE SmackDown this week was scheduled to feature a massive singles match between Liv Morgan and Naomi. However, members of the Judgment Day attacked one half of the women's tag team champions beforehand, resulting in Nick Aldis kicking both of them from the arena. Aldis can now order Adam Pearce to punish Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez by taking away their women's tag team title opportunity on the upcoming episode of Raw. Last week's episode of SmackDown featured a massive update on the Jade Cargill situation, revealing that Morgan and Rodriguez were exiting the parking lot when the stone was being taken into the ambulance. Bianca Belair and Naomi launched an attack on Morgan on Raw, assuming that she and her partner Raquel Rodriguez were the ones to take Jade Cargill out of action. Additionally, Adam Pearce confirmed a huge tag team match for the Women's Tag Team Championships on the upcoming episode of the Red brand. However, if the duo of Morgan and Rodriguez continues to cause chaos wherever they go, the general managers might have to take action to assert control over their respective teams. With Nick Aldis frustrated by the Judgment Day's actions on SmackDown, he may take action against the duo. Aldis might ask Adam Pearce to cancel the upcoming Women's Tag Team Championship match, which could potentially build some tension between both teams before WrestleMania. The Rock's return reportedly made major changes to WWE SmackDown. This week's WWE SmackDown also featured the return of the Final Boss, which appeared to be a sudden shift for the show. The Rock had two significant reasons for his comeback, but ended up making changes to the card of the show, reportedly scrapping a few matches. While the matches weren't scrapped, major changes were made to them. Liv Morgan vs. Naomi was one of them, which turned into a brawl to save time for the Final Boss. The Rock is set to return once more at Elimination Chamber next week. Fans will have to wait and see what WWE has planned for the star next. The night after SmackDown, the air in the WWE headquarters felt thick with tension. Adam Pearce sat in his office, staring at the note in his hand, a directive issued from none other than Nick Aldis himself. The Raw general manager had received explicit orders to punish two WWE superstars who had crossed the line during the latest episode of SmackDown. The request came directly from Aldis, who had been keeping a close eye on the unfolding drama on both brands. While he was still adjusting to his new role, Aldis wasn't one to shy away from making tough decisions. The previous night's events had forced his hand, and now it was up to Pearce to implement the punishment. The two culprits were none other than Sami Zayn and Solo Sikoa. It was clear that both men had lost their focus, their egos threatening to undermine the very core of SmackDown. Sami, who had been in an emotional tug-of-war with the Bloodline for months, had let his frustration boil over in a wild outburst that left both Roman Reigns and his cousins in the dust. Solo, meanwhile, had been left seething on the outside, growing increasingly erratic as he sought revenge for what he perceived as disrespect toward his family. What began as a chaotic brawl had spiraled out of control, costing SmackDown the integrity of the match and placing the entire show at risk. Nick Aldis, ever the disciplinarian, wasn't going to let that slide. Pearce knew that this wasn't going to be an easy decision. He had dealt with countless superstars in the past, but dealing with these two particular individuals required a level of finesse. Sami was unpredictable, caught up in personal vendettas that sometimes clouded his judgment, while Solo was dangerously loyal, his temper a ticking time bomb when it came to defending the Bloodline's honor. The first order of business was Sami Zayn. Adam Pearce sat back in his chair, thinking about how to approach the situation. Zayn wasn't a stranger to controversy, and his struggles with the Bloodline had brought him to some of the most intense moments of his career. However, his actions on SmackDown had crossed a line again. Pearce had witnessed Zayn's explosive temper before, but his behavior this time was different. The insults, the reckless abandon with which he attacked Roman Reigns and his family, it wasn't just a matter of rivalry anymore. It was personal. Pearce's office door swung open, and in walked Zayn, looking every bit the man who had just caused chaos on national television. He wore a scowl that could have melted steel, and there was a fire in his eyes that suggested he wasn't ready to accept the consequences of his actions. "Adam," Sami said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I assume you've seen what went down last night. Can't say I'm proud of it, but I had to do what I had to do. Pearce exhaled, keeping his gaze steady. You made a mess of SmackDown last night, Sammy. Nick Aldis has ordered me to take disciplinary action. Your actions have cost us credibility and jeopardized future opportunities. Sammy scoffed, crossing his arms. You've got to be kidding me. You're punishing me for standing up to Roman Reigns and his cult? You've got to be out of your mind. Pearce leaned forward, his tone firm. I'm not punishing you for standing up to Reigns. I'm punishing you for losing control, for escalating things to the point where our main event was ruined. You're too valuable to let this kind of behavior slide. Sammy's face darkened, and for a moment, Pearce wondered if the volatile superstar was going to snap. But instead of a physical outburst, Sammy's expression shifted to one of cold determination. Fine, Sammy muttered. What are you going to do about it? Pearce took a breath. You'll be banned from all non-televised WWE events for the next month. No house shows, no live events, nothing. You're going to sit back, cool off, and reassess your approach. Your career isn't just about your personal vendettas, it's about the bigger picture. Sammy's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. You're making a big mistake, he said under his breath before turning and storming out of Pearce's office. Pearce rubbed his temples, knowing this wasn't going to be an easy road. But as general manager, he had to follow through with the orders handed down to him. Now, it was time to deal with Solo Sikoa. Solo was different. While Sammy's actions had been motivated by his desire to get one over on the bloodline, Solo's temper was something more primal. He wasn't just fighting to make a statement, he was fighting for his family's legacy. That made him unpredictable and far more dangerous. Pearce stood up and walked toward the door, opening it just as Solo Sikoa stormed in. The towering figure of Solo loomed in the doorway, his chest heaving, his fists clenched. He was already furious, and Pearce knew it. You've got something to say to me, Adam? Solo growled, his eyes locking onto Pearce with a look that could melt steel. I did what needed to be done. Roman is my brother, and anyone who disrespects him, disrespects the bloodline. Pearce stayed calm, standing his ground. I understand your loyalty, Solo. But last night, you crossed the line. You didn't just disrespect the SmackDown brand, you jeopardized the safety of the locker room. Solo's fists clenched tighter. You think I care about that? You think I care about what anyone else thinks? Pearce shook his head. No, but I care about the future of this company. Nick Aldis wants to make it clear that actions like yours can't happen again. Solo took a threatening step forward, his towering figure casting a shadow over Pearce. What are you going to do about it? I'm putting you in a no-contact match with someone from Raw next week. You'll face a competitor who can keep you focused, keep you from spiraling out of control. This is your punishment, Solo. The words seemed to register in Solo's mind, and for a moment, he considered his options. The idea of being in a match against someone from Raw was humiliating for him, especially when he was used to being the one in control. You can try to stop me, Pearce, Solo growled, but no one can keep me down for long. Not even Nick Aldis. Pearce kept his stance firm. We'll see about that. You've got one chance to prove you can keep your temper in check. Solo didn't respond, but his glare said it all. He was livid, but Pearce knew the punishment was necessary. As the door slammed behind Solo, Adam Pearce sat back down in his chair, letting out a long, slow breath. His decisions were not easy ones, but they were necessary. The WWE locker room had to understand that their actions had consequences, especially when they jeopardized the brand. Nick Aldis had issued the orders, and Pearce had followed through. Now, it was up to the superstars to prove they could live up to the expectations of their positions. If they couldn't, the consequences would only get harsher.